Alright, so what sparked your interest in music?
From the time I was a kid, I've always been, you know, kind of pushed by music. Music's always been something I love doing. I grew up, my grandma took me to the church for the first time and singing hymns. That led to singing in the choir at school, and really just focusing on music's always been a huge part of my life, whether it be listening to it or actually playing it. But yeah, my grandma definitely got me into actually performing in front of people, and it just kind of all spawned from there.
Alright, what kind of music did you listen to growing up?
Um, my mom listened to a lot of soul music, so every Saturday night we'd go to my dad's room and he had a record player and we would listen to, my mom listened to soul music, she loved like Otis Redding, Wilson Pickett, Jackson 5, The Temptations, anything that Motown or Stax Records was doing, she really, really dug. And my dad was like a country guy, so I grew up listening to like Merle Haggard, Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, like all the outlaw stuff. And so when I first started playing music, naturally, it was like a soulful version of country music. It was me showing a lot of emotion, me screaming a lot. And once I got into high school and got my own car, I was able to go to the record store, and that's when I started falling in love with Bob Dylan and Paul Simon, Neil Young, Bruce Springsteen, Ryan Adams. And then when I got to college, I started managing a record store, and that's when I just kind of nosedived into every genre of music.
Sorry, I forgot my question. So, like, what kind of music would you, if you were to go to like a record store now, what kind of music would you search for?
I don't know. It's funny. We're at a point now where like a lot of the artists that I really love are like friends of mine. So I catch myself buying like Friends records. So when I go to School Kids, I think the last time I went to School Kids, I spent like $100 on records, and probably $80 of it was people I know from the road, bands that I've loved, but now I know them. I can call them, and it's kind of cool to see my friends kind of coming up with us. Like everybody's starting to be like professional instead of just being like punk kids that tour and play crappy rock clubs. It's nice to see everybody's like finding success doing what they love doing.
Do you ever find yourself going back to some of the music that you listened to growing up? Or?
Oh, for sure. I have a totally new appreciation for soul music now. It's not just music my mom listened to on Saturday nights. Like going back and listening to an Otis Redding record, like you can listen to those records and actually feel things. As a 12-year-old kid who was listening to like Tupac, I went through a hip hop stage in my teenage years. Soul music just wasn't cool. It wasn't hip. It wasn't fresh. But now you can listen to it, and it's making a huge resurgence. You listen to Alabama Shakes, you listen to St. Paul and the Broken Bones, you listen to these bands that are finding like a lot of mainstream success playing soul music, and it takes on a completely different meaning. So yeah, I find myself, and I still love all the stuff my dad listened to, all the old country. You can't be from North Carolina and listen to like Johnny Cash or Waylon Jennings and not dig it and not feel it. So it's a cool thing.
I guess, how has your family affected you? You said that you grew up a lot around rock, but like how has their affected like your songwriting and?
Oh, I grew up, my family, I grew up in a place called Reedsville, North Carolina, which is about 15 miles north of Greensboro. My parents, lower middle class. We didn't know we were poor, because my parents never made us feel poor. They both worked really. My dad sells auto parts for a living. I grew up in a little place outside of Reedsville called Bethany. It's like a little township, and it's just farms. It's tobacco farms, soybean farms. So kind of that pushed me toward more of the blue-collar storytelling side, just because that's how I grew up. And that really affected my songwriting more than anything, being from a small town, moving to Raleigh, and kind of the juxtaposition between big city, small town kid, and it still comes through in my songs. So.
Okay. I read somewhere that you wanted to be a lawyer when you were in high school.
Yeah.
What made you decide that you were going to pursue songwriting and music?
Once I got to college, I started off at NC State. I was a double major in political science and history. I had every intention to go into law school. And then I started noticing that like instead of studying for tests, instead of writing papers, I was diving into records and I was trying to play guitar and I was writing songs. And it just, school started fading. All through high school, I was very much, focused on college and getting out of my small town. And once I got here, I realized that I didn't really want to do that anymore, that music was, it was kind of a dumb thing to do, because being a musician is the only career path that has a 90% fail rate. Most people don't really want to get into that line of work, where you're almost destined to fail. But it was all I was really focusing on. And I stopped going to class, and I stopped turning in papers, and I started booking more shows, and I started writing songs. And that's when I started realizing that maybe being a lawyer wasn't going to pan out for me.
When did you realize you could make a living off playing music?
Last year. We've been doing this for almost 10 years, and for a really long time, we play about 300 shows a year. So we were basically playing shows to pay to be on the road. We weren't making a living. And up until about, I'd say probably 2 years ago is when we really started making like a substantial living, like paying all of our bills on time. And now we make, a normal living. It's my job now. It pays the bills. I have health insurance. I have a 401k. I pay my taxes. It's a real job now, which is nice.
So you said that a Wilco lyric was the inspiration for the name of your band.
Yeah.
How was Wilco played into?
Wilco was like one of my favorite bands when I was in high school. When I was a senior in high school, they put out a record called Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, which hands down revolutionized music for me, because Wilco started off, they were like they were an offshoot of Uncle Tupelo, and then the first couple Wilco records were really like Americana records. And so with Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, they really kind of turned into like the Radiohead from the Midwest. They turned into like a weird ambient rock band. And it just taught me what Americana music could be. You can push the limits of even like the basic country folk movement. You can actually make it into something really weird. And even though we don't really sound a lot like Wilco, that kind of whole ethos about being able to push something and turning into something different really, really sparked my interest.
All right. What musicians would you say you consider yourself like similar to?
A lot of people, a lot of magazines have wrote that I sound like Bruce Springsteen if he came from the South instead of New Jersey. I really love the boss, Ryan Adams, a local Raleigh boy. He really kind of influenced me a lot as far as the singer-songwriter aspect of things go. So I'd say a mix between Ryan and Bruce is kind of what I get compared to a lot.
What do you think, like, your recent albums, why do you think they've been successful?
I think it's all just about a relatability. It's about being honest. I don't really candy coat anything, so a lot of my songwriting is very straightforward and to the point. And I write about stuff that we've all been through. The love, the heartbreak, working for what you got, like questioning yourself. Did I make the right decision on my life? Being a musician, I'm not the only one that I know people that work at a bank at 30 who question what they're doing with their life. I write about common human themes, and I think that people are able to relate to those, especially when they get to my age, especially when you turn 30 and you start realizing like maybe I made the wrong decision or did I make the right decision. So I think that's why we've started seeing a lot more success.
Okay. So what was the inspiration behind Burn, Flicker, Die?
Burn, Flicker, Die was a record of just desperation. We were a band that had been touring for 7.5 years. We were sleeping on floors. We weren't making any money. Our parents weren't very proud of us. We were kind of failures. And so that was going to be our last record. So we made this record out of sheer desperation, like kind of all or nothing. Like if this record does good, then we'll keep doing it. If it doesn't, then we'll all part ways and work really crappy jobs. And luckily, Burn, Flicker, Die kind of took off for us. And then over the 2 years Burn, Flicker, Die has been out, it did really well. And then Wolves has kind of been a game changer for us. Rolling Stone magazine named us one of the top 10 bands to watch in 2015. A lot of people have already put us on their best of list for 2015. It's been a really good year.
What did you do differently with that album that you maybe hadn't with some of your other ones?
There was just that kind of, with Burn, Flicker, Die, there was just that kind of, this might be the last one. I never looked at a record as being the last one. I always thought, okay, we'll do this, and then start focusing on the next one. That was the, if Burn, Flicker, Die hadn't have done what it did, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. I'd probably made your coffee while you interviewed somebody else. It's Burn, Flicker, Die was like it's supposed to be it, and luckily it wasn't, you know. And now I get to do something I really love doing for a living.
So what album or song would you say you're most proud of?
They're all like, it's like asking a parent who their favorite kid is, you know. They all have a special place. The song off Burn, Flicker, Die that I'm most proud of might be Casualties of Rock and Roll. That song really shows the desperation, you know. It shows me admitting to myself that like there's a chance that I could be a complete and utter failure in this profession. And it's me, and I think that's what appealed to people, that kind of brutal honesty. Like, you don't want your rock and roll stars to admit their failures. You want them to be cocky, you want them to have that machismo, and that was something that record didn't have. That record had just utter vulnerability, and I think that's why people really dug it, and that's why I think that song, I still play that song every single night. I love playing that song. So.
Right. What's important to you when you write songs and write lyrics?
Transparency, being completely honest with the listener. I hate people that write about stuff they don't know. One of the main things I was told when I first started writing songs was write what you know. And so I write about being on the road a lot. I write about heartbreak. I write about falling in love. I think that's my biggest quality, my biggest positive quality in my songwriting is just the transparency, the honesty. You listen to my records and you kind of really get a sense of who I am. I don't really deviate much from the guy you hear on the records, which is, I think, a good thing.
Would you say there's like a particular place that you look for inspiration, or just sort of regular life?
At first it was just other music, and now it's reading authors that I never really focused on before, reading books, trying to find inspiration in your day-to-day, try to take it all in. When you're walking down the street, you know, so many times we learn how to cancel out this kind of sensory of our environment, but it's about taking in the small things, like watching someone talk to someone else. Just human observation is what I've really tried to focus on. I carry around a journal, and you know, pretty much anything I see, I write down. Anything that kind of strikes my interest, I write down. If somebody recommends a band or a classical composer or an author that I'm not really familiar with, I'll check them out, and sometimes that will spark an idea, a song, a line, and then sometimes it's just garbage that somebody recommended to me that I should have never listened to. But sometimes, you know, truly brilliant things come out of just paying attention to what's going on around you.
Right. So you had a lot of people coming in and out of the band from when it first started around 2009. Why do you think that is, and why do you think like your current group?
The first 2 years we were a band, I had 24 members come in and out of the band, and it was just about commitment levels. At first you ask somebody to be in your band and they think they're going to play one show a month, and you know, get some free beer and meet a chick or something. But then when you start asking people to, like, okay, we're going to go on tour for 2 months straight, and I need you to quit your job, and I need you to focus on this, and it's kind of hard to find that commitment. But luckily, you know, around 2008, 2009, I've had the same band since then, so I found a bunch of guys that kind of had the same vision that I had for the music, which was being a really hard-working band, being a heavy touring band, and just really giving up everything they knew as like a normal life and trusting me on the road. And luckily we can look back now and say that I was right. But
All right. So where do you see the band going in the next few years?
It's all about exponential growth. As long as tomorrow's better than yesterday, then that's all I care about. You know, at first we were playing in front of 2 or 3 people every town we went to, and now we're playing in front of 400 or 500 people every town we go to, and we're selling out shows. And you know, as long as we don't take a step back, as long as we keep taking steps forward, that's how businesses grow. That's how businesses maintain, and hopefully that's where our music's going. Like, our fan base is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and as long as it does that, I don't see any of us ever walking away from it.
All right. What made you decide to stop drinking?
My wife helped out a lot. I just got married in December, and it was really getting in the way of me being an artist. It was getting in the way of me being a good partner. You know, calling every day at 3 o'clock in the morning when you get back to your hotel room wasted isn't how anybody wants to date somebody. So me being sober, I was able to actually have conversations at night when I get home. I'm not wanting to stay at the bars every night. I'm home every night before midnight. I'm calling her, and we're actually talking about our day, Skyping and FaceTiming and all that good stuff. And it just helps my relationship out a lot. I put on a better show. Instead of seeing like the drunk idiot on stage kind of forgetting lyrics and stumbling around, I'm actually focused on putting on a good people aren't seeing us for $5 covers anymore. People are paying $20 and $25 to see us now, and I know that if I paid $20 or $25 to see a band and they were just hammered the entire time, I probably wouldn't go back and see that band. So it's about longevity. It's about preserving what we have, and being sober has really helped me do that.
Can you pinpoint like a certain person that really got you interested in music, or would you just say it was like the people you grew up with?
People I grew up with. My grandma always encouraged me to sing. My parents used to always tell me to stop singing. They told me I had a terrible voice. My dad told me I couldn't carry a tune in the bucket. And I have a very unique voice. And so luckily in my early 20s, I really kind of fine-tuned it and found what worked for me, what didn't work for me. My grandma always encouraged me. She was a church lady, so she always encouraged me to be part of the choir and sing songs. So like most kids who grow up in the South, I'm raised Southern Baptist, and I grew up singing hymns, and I grew up doing that kind of stuff. And but as far as people who pushed me to play music, I'd say that the people I hung out with in college that kind of told me that my songs weren't bad. Those are the ones that kind of kept me going to where I am now.
Right. I think you touched on this a little bit earlier, but how did growing up in small poor, like historically, I think it was tobacco.
Yeah, tobacco.
How did that influence you as a kid, and how has that fed into your music?
It made me want to get out. I didn't want to end up being a guy that worked a minimum wage job in my hometown. I didn't want to be that guy. I wanted to move to a bigger city. Before I moved to Raleigh, I'd lived in Reedsville, which is the home of American Tobacco Company, and for hundreds of years they've been like they make cigarettes. That's where all four of my grandparents worked. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to sell auto parts like my dad. I wanted to get out. When I first came here, I wanted to be a lawyer, and then I realized like the vibrant music scene that Raleigh had, the musical history that Raleigh had, and I wanted to be a part of it, no matter what. So the one good thing I can say that came from being from a small town was like kind of like the idea of hard work. Anything you put your mind to, you can do. If you work hard enough at something and believe in yourself enough, I know it sounds cheesy and cliche, but it's totally true. So many people told me no when I first started this band here back in 2006, but now I'm the one laughing about it. It's keep telling me no, and I'm going to. If you want it bad enough, you'll just keep ignoring them and trying your best. I know that's kind of I think every Nike commercial tells you that, and it sounds really cheesy, but it's facts.
What made you want to get tattoos, and what was the inspiration behind them?
I never wanted to work at a bank, so I just started. I don't know. On the road, I meet a lot of really interesting people on the road. I meet chefs that offer to cook me dinner when I come through town. I meet photographers that offer to take our portrait when we come through town. And then I meet tattoo artists that offer to give me free tattoos when I come through town. So I've learned to be very resourceful. When somebody offers me something for free, I usually take it. And so it started off with one tattoo, and one tattoo turned into two, and then now they're just everywhere. And it's, luckily I don't have to ever worry about working a job that requires me not to have tattoos. And luckily it's not as taboo as it was, 20 years ago. There's doctors, there's lawyers that have tattoos now. So it's just a form of expression. It's something I enjoy doing, and I consider myself an artist, and I consider tattoo artist, and it's just, if I can be a canvas for something they want to do, then I'm totally down for it.
Nice. How would you describe your creative process when you're writing songs?
I have to be by myself. I have to be alone. 98% of the songs I've ever written were in my apartment, sitting on a couch, TV off, laptop closed, just me and a guitar and my notebook. And it's me, it might start off with a line or me humming a melody that turns into a complete song. And then once I get the song done, I take it to the band. And then I like to, I make the skeleton, and the band puts the muscle and the meat on it. And everything you hear on the record is the band taking something very simple that I bring to the table and multiplying that. And it's been the same since 2006, and I don't really think it's going to change. That's how I write, and that's the only way I've been able to ever write. So I think I'm going to keep doing it.
Do you listen to music while you're writing?
Not at all. Okay. If I listen to music, like a lot of times I'll imitate. So if like I'm listening to music and then I decide I want to write a song, half the time it turns out I'm just playing the chord progression that I was just listening to, and I try to clear my head and really try to create something new instead of just mimic something I've heard before.
lastly, like, how do you describe your sound?
You know, it's too rock and roll to be country music, and it's too country to be rock and roll. It's kind of, you know, it's a redneck singing for a rock and roll band. You know, no matter what kind of music we play, as long as I'm singing, it's going to sound country. It's going to sound twangy. That's just how I sound. So I think the broad umbrella it falls under is Americana music. It's American rock and roll. But I definitely agree with people. There's country elements, there's folk elements, there's bluegrass elements. But I like to think that we're just a rock and roll band that's kind of twangy.
Right. And how would you say North Carolina, like its music background, how would you say that's fed into you?
Oh, North Carolina, you know, it's the home of country music, the Blue Ridge Mountains. I come from the Piedmont area, like right there at the base of the Blue Ridge. I was raised on country music. North Carolina is one thing that I always talk about. I talk about being from the state of North Carolina. I talk about NC State. Those are two things I'm so proud of, is being from this state. Like a lot of musicians, when they start finding success, they move to New York, they move to Nashville, they move to Austin, they move to LA. I'll always live in Raleigh. It's where I got my start. It's been where I found the most support, and it's something I want to always continue to give back. And you know, when Wolves came out, we had our CD release party at the Lincoln Theater. 31 states flew in for it. So people who have never been to Raleigh, never been to North Carolina, flew in just for the experience to see what I've been talking about in my songs. And sometimes I glamorize it more than I should, but this is my favorite place in the world. I've seen every city there is to see in America, and I keep coming back here. And there's a lot of really great stuff going on in Raleigh, and I want to be a part of it.
All right. If you could describe, or if you could listen to like some music just for an hour, like who would you think you would listen to?
Oh man, that's hard. The band, I really like the band a lot. I really like Springsteen a lot. There's a band from Raleigh. They're not a band anymore. An old band called Whiskey Town. It's like one of my favorite bands ever. Yeah, those are some classic examples. I really love the Drive-By Truckers, Jason Isbell, Ryan Adams. It runs the gamut. New artist, old artist, but I tend to listen to a lot of songwriters. You know, when I started this band, I wanted to be one of the bands that had a really good songwriter that had a really great band, like Tom Petty has the Heartbreakers, Springsteen has the E Street Band. I have I argue one of the best live bands going right now. They're amazing dudes, and hopefully I'm writing songs that justify them being in the band. So yeah, I'm open-minded to pretty much any style of music, but when it comes to, if I could listen to something for an hour, it's listening to somebody that has something to say. I listen to the words way more than I listen to the music. So.
All right, thank you.
Heck yeah, man. Thanks a ton.